Today is Friday, September 11th, 2020. 19 years ago today, we had one of the darkest days in our country's history. I'd say one of, because there's been darker days before. Such as with, with the Civil War that we had back in the 1800s. We've had assassinations on our politicians. We've had riots. Those were dark days. Most of them was before I was even born. I remember going to bed that Monday night, September 10th, 2001. I think I went to bed around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, something like that. After I got off the phone with a friend who I would later go on to take care of for 16 years. She was the last voice I heard that night, and she was the first voice I heard the next day. She called me and said, "Click, turn on the TV." I did. And when I turned the TV on, it was right at when the second plane hit. Just click of the power button of the remote control. That's how I found out the events were unfolding. I was asleep when the first plane hit. Back then, I would sleep until 10:30, 11 o'clock. Sometimes not till noon, depends. Even though I was working at the time, but when I was working at that time, I was doing custodial work, which were in the evening, from 4:30 to whatever time we got all the contracts done. That day was my off day. And I think, I was working for a company that employs people with physical and developmental disabilities. And, because I do have cerebral palsy, so we would, have contracts where we had to clean places like the police barracks or social services, even a Midas. Places that, there was a place called rigid ply rafters. We would clean those on Thursdays. But 9/11 happened on a Tuesday. Normally, the way my schedule was back then, I would work Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, with the condition that I get off in time to be able to go to church. We had, prior to that, we had choir practices that were on Thursdays. So, that's why I had the schedule of working Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And the lady who called me would work Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we would trade off. But it was earlier in that year we had everything, choir practices moved from Wednesday or Thursdays to Wednesdays. Now the church doesn't even have a choir anymore. They, from what I heard, they have a praise team. But getting back to 9/11, that I was glued to the TV back then. And back then, I didn't have a computer. I did have a PlayStation. That was my entertainment that got me through the day back then. Or if if I wasn't playing, I would be watching MSNBC. That was the station. That was the station I was watching uh, throughout the day when I got that phone call. What was happening in New York, and then next thing I heard was the Pentagon got hit, and there was another plane that was still in the air after all planes had been grounded after those three planes. And they were trying to get by they am referring to the FAA, trying to get that flight to land, to get to an airport and stay there. But it turned out that flight was hijacked as well. It was later speculated that maybe that plane was heading for the White House. But see, the people on that flight, the victims that is, they found out what happened with the other three planes. And they realized that, they were in trouble as well. Well, they were already taken hostage before they found out. And then when they realized what was going on, we can't let this hit another target. That's basically what they said. And what was it? What's the guy's name who said, "Let's roll"? The people on those planes were the heroes that day, absolute heroes. What happened? The area that I heard where the plane crashed was called Somerset. Where I was living at the time was less than an hour away. Less than an hour away. I was to the south of it. It was in Pennsylvania, and I was in Maryland. And then when that one crashed, I said, "How many more planes are there?" And then I thought to myself, "Where is President Bush? Where is he?" Nobody knew where he was. I think it was not for 8 hours we didn't know where he was, and for good reason we didn't know where he was because they didn't know if something was going to happen to Air Force One. That's what the plane is called that presidents fly on, Air Force One. Wow, 19 years, and yet for me sometimes it still feels like yesterday. 19 years. I don't want to ever have to live through another event like that again. Um, we can't say it'll never happen again because the saying goes, "Never say never." 19 years. I was a young adult in my early 20s at the time. And yet I still remember that day like it was yesterday. And it's going to be hard to believe next year's going to be 20 years. 20. It's a somber day for a lot of families who are, you know, I've heard people, what's her name? Ann Coulter, I think it was her name, that she would, like, not long after 9/11 happened, I think she came under fire for telling people to get over it. You know, when somebody loses a loved one, doesn't matter how long ago they've been gone, you don't tell people to get over it. The other day I made a comment on Facebook, a post that I made, just basically scoffing at something that Donald Trump said, where he said that he's done a good job. And I said 191,000 plus deaths. That's, I mean, you know, at the time, I was 60 that 192,000. But I said 191,000 plus deaths from this pandemic is not a good job. And somebody told me, get over it. And I responded back and said, you know what? I dare you tell the families of those 191,000 that died from this virus to get over it. It was a tasteless comment that she made. Apparently, she didn't like my comment, but well, or maybe, or no, well, she probably got embarrassed that I called her out. What did she do? She deleted me from Facebook. And you know what? I'm not going to lose sleep over that. I'm just sorry I dignified her comment with a response, and I shouldn't have done that. I should just blow it off as if to say, your tasteless comment doesn't even deserve a response. You never tell anybody who's lost loved ones to get over it. Some people handle loss of loved ones differently. Some handle it and say, you know, well, let me just put it this way. People grieve in their own way. People grieve differently. When my grandfather died in 1993, I didn't cry. But keep in mind, I was a teenager at the time. And I guess I just didn't understand what that was, what that meant. The only thing I knew about as far as people dying at that time was that they're not coming back. And I asked my mom, I said, when people die, what do they say? She said, close your eyes. And I did. She said, that's what they say. Nothing. And then when she told me to close my eyes, that's when it really started thinking that it's final. You know, 19 years ago, today people got up. I mean, what people get up every day, and there's people that die every day. But talking about 9/11, 19 years ago, 3,000 plus people woke up to go about their day, some to go to work, some to travel to wherever they needed to go. They woke up that morning not knowing that they just had their last good night's sleep. Not knowing what was waiting for them. And that's why we shouldn't take life for granted, because when you go and lay down and sleep at night, you don't know if you just lived your last day. Even after 19 years, I still express my condolences to people who lost loved ones on that fateful day. It's an event that I wish none of us ever had to witness. It's an event that really should have never happened. It didn't need to happen. But yet we had terrorists who just hated our country, hated everything that we stood for. They hated the freedoms that we have. But we should be thankful for the freedoms that we do have. Freedom of expression, freedom of opinion, freedom of religion, freedom of the press. Uh, the freedoms that we have are not free. There's a cost that comes with it. And that's why we have the military. We should be thankful for the freedoms that we have. Because there's other countries around the world that don't have those freedoms. I always tell people that I feel like God, that I feel blessed that God has let me be born into one of the greatest countries in the world. And not somewhere else, where I wouldn't have the freedoms to enjoy it. You know, the freedoms that I have to enjoy today. So when you guys lay your head down tonight, first of all, before you do that, hug all your loved ones, your spouse, your children. Tell them how much you love them. Because tomorrow's not promised. It's not. I'm going to end the video on that note. 19 years ago today. So, it's just one of those darkest days in this country's history. And may it never be repeated again. I'll see you in the next video.